Hello. So the poem we're going to be doing today is Memory by Christina Rossetti. And our LO today is to consider how religion is presented in Rossetti's poem. Please make sure you have the poem Memory in front of you. And of course, any contextual notes that you wish to add to or refer to in this lesson. So our entry task today is, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? Do you think the way you think now will be the same then? So for example, just the way you think about things. Do you think your brain will be a similar thinking in 10 years' time? And it might, the trouble is it's hard for you to think back 10 years ago because, of course, you'll have been like 7, 8, or 9. So, of course, your brains would have changed from then. But, you're 17, 18. Realistically, how much more do you think your brain will change? Do you think your views will massively change now because you are pretty much almost, legal adults? So how much do you think you will change, and what do you want to be doing in 10 years' time? Do you want kids by then? What do you want? What work do you want to be doing? What's your passion? Do you think your passion will change, etc.? So the poem Memory, and this poem is in 2 parts. So the first 2 boxes are part 1, and then the second part is part 2. I have labelled them, but just to make it really explicit. So part 1. I nursed it in my bosom while it lived. I hid it in my heart when it was dead. In joy I sat alone, even so I grieved, alone and nothing said. I shut the door to face the naked truth. I stood alone, I faced the truth alone, stripped bare of self-regard or forms or ruth, till first and last were shown. I took the perfect balances and weighed. No shaking of my hand disturbed the poise. Waited, found it wanting, not a word I said, but silent made my choice. None know the choice I made, I make it still. None know the choice I made, and broke my heart, breaking mine idol. I have braced my will, once chosen for once my part. I broke it at a blow, I laid it cold, crossed in my deep heart where it used to live. My heart dies inch by inch, the time grows old in which I grieve. Part 2. I have a room whereinto no one enters, save I myself alone. There sits a blessed memory on a throne, there my life centres. While winter comes and goes, oh tedious coma, and while it nip wind blows, while bloom the bloodless lily and warm rose of lavish summer. If any could force entrance, he might see there one buried yet not dead, before whose face I no more bow my head, or bend my knee there. But often in my worn life's autumn weather I watch there with clear eyes, and think how it will be in paradise when we're together. Okay, so have a look through those 2 sections. They are, one poem, and consider what you think the poem is about. I've said about religion, and I would also ask you to consider Rossetti's love life as well, and how that might play a role in this poem. So context and summary, I've kind of put it all together here. So the first part of the poem was written in 1857, the second part was written in 1865, and it deals with her rejection of love, despite being engaged twice and having several more men interested in her. Given the low status of unmarried women in Victorian times, spinsterhood meant social failure, and there were few satisfying alternatives to marriage. To not marry was a courageous choice. So for Rossetti to break up 2 engagements was, she had to have courage to do that. The essence of the poem is the memory of love relinquished in this life, but to be consummated in an afterlife of fulfilment. Rossetti gave up playing chess because she won too often and enjoyed it too much. It is this sense of purity that drove her to refuse the secret love of her life, and to draw strength from his memory and the promise of fulfilment after death. So essentially it's a poem about Rossetti giving up love in life because she believes that in death, in the afterlife, she will be loved, and there will be love forevermore, and it will be worth more because it's forever. So the first 2 stanzas then. I nursed it in my bosom while it lived, I hid it in my heart when it was dead. In joy I sat alone, even so I grieved, alone and nothing said. So, firstly, the first 2 lines there, most pure loving act equals nursing. So, nursing a baby. And the death of such desire may represent Rossetti's rejection of several proposals of marriage and other suitors. Then you've got the next line, in joy I sat alone, even so I grieved, alone and nothing said. So you've got the oxymoron there of the joy and the grieving. So the speaker has contradictory emotions, a need for long-term love and a desire for religious purity. And that final line, alone and nothing said, she says nothing about her inner emotional life. This idea of silence appears in her other poems, for example, the poem What Would I Give? She just doesn't want to speak about it because it's irrelevant ultimately. Her desire for religion is more important. So I've put at the top of the slide uh, whatever you want to call it, a contextual box, I guess, saying at the time that Rossetti would have been considered or regarded as an attractive young woman who should be seeking a marriage partner, but this is only if she conforms to societal rules. She is choosing not to. She wants love in the afterlife. She chooses God over love. The next stanza, I shut the door to face the naked truth. I stood alone. I faced the truth alone. So the speaker is metaphorically shutting the door to block out what she regards as the truth about herself, her rejection of earthly love and her acceptance of the rigours of her religious faith. And she faces them, but she also wants to block them out, as in she doesn't want other people to say anything about them. She wants to face this truth alone. You've got the repetition of the I there. This is, a statement of integrity of the person she is and her own standards, irrespective of the Victorian expectations of society. She is choosing this for herself, going against everything that Victorian society would expect of her. Therefore, it does show this strength of her. And this is in line 2, creates a pause after alone, again adding to this sense of her determination. The final 2 lines, stripped bare of self-regard, of all forms or ruth till first and last was shown. So the speaker sees herself as devoid of feeling for herself or for those around her, rather than first and last of her being. The first and last could be a reference to the Alpha and Omega of Christianity, as in the Book of Revelations. These are all that matter to her, that define her being. So the next 2 stanzas then. Took the perfect balances and waited. No shaking of my hand disturbed the poise. Waited, found it wanting, not a word I said, but silent made by choice. So that first line, perfect balances and waited, each option is good. She had 2 options, either was fine. No shaking of my hand, it's a metaphor for having no inner emotions that are disturbing her poise. She's picked this decision, she's not worried about it. Waited, found it wanting. She found that when she weighed them, they were out of balance, and yet said nothing. And that last line, but silent made by choice, she didn't make a display of her choice of faith. She just quietly accepted her truth. So again, she doesn't make a show and dance about how she's chosen God over men. She just does it because she quietly believes it and doesn't, want to make a show and dance about it, I guess. But she doesn't judge other people for the decisions they have made. And that's what she means by the perfect balances. Either is fine, but for her, religion was more important. The next stanza, none know the choice I made, I make it still. None know the choice I made and broke my heart. Breaking mine idol, I have braced my will, once chosen for once my part. So you've got the anaphora of none know the choice I made, giving the importance to the notion that she made the decision without others' input. Again, as I've previously mentioned, this is her choice. And then you've got the and broke my heart. The choice she eventually makes is extremely painful, and she does struggle with the reality of it. I mean, ultimately, she was engaged twice and broke them off for religion. It can't be the easiest of decisions for her, but she does it, and just, the reality of it is hard, but, she feels she makes the right choice. And then breaking mine idol, this could refer to her own destruction of a false god, that of earthly pleasure. So by breaking the relationship, she's breaking that false idol, or that false god idea. Again, if you look at the context box at the top, her decision to reject lovers who didn't match up to her high standards in favour of her Christian faith would have been a tough one. As I've said before, for a woman, this was a very courageous step, leading her into spinsterhood and the low status and limited life it brings. Final stanza of number 1. I broke it at a blow, I laid it cold, crushed in my deep heart where it used to live. My heart dies inch by inch, the time grows old in which I grieve. You've got the plosive and alliterative B there, the B sound, adding power to the violent imagery. And then you've got this semantic field of powerful and aggressive words, the broke and blow, crushed. It's very aggressive with what she's trying to say. Then you've got the binary opposites of live and dies in line 2 and line 3 there. So where it used to live, my heart now dies, or heart dies. It adds to the drama of it. And again, it's very dramatic for her because, you know, this is the choice she's made. And then you've got the alliteration of the GR sound, the gr sound, again, an aggressive sound, like a growl. And then ultimately it's her choice will result in grief and the inner death of her worldly being. Because again, by now choosing to live this spinster life, she's going to live a lower class life than she would have had she been married. Part 2. So I have a room wherein to no one enters save I myself alone. There sits a blessed memory on a throne, there my life centres. So you've got the present tense now. This is not about her memories anymore. So bear in mind the poem is called Memory. This is now not a memory, this is present. And there was this change in rhythm in part 2 in general, apparent in these final 4 stanzas. It unsettles the reader to draw attention to the point being made. And you can note the rhythm change quite clearly. And then I have a room. The room may be a literal room, or it might be a metaphor for her own private inner life, as she refers to in the first stanza, section as well, this inner life that she's talking of. And then the second stanza there, while winter comes and goes, O tedious coma, and while it nip wind blows, while bloom the bloodless lily and warm rose of lavish summer. So the seasons are a metaphor for passing of time. So you've got from winter to summer there, and so time has changed. She's still not with anyone. She's still very much choosing religion. The compound noun nipwind is neat and concise. It's a metaphor also perhaps for the inner pain she may feel in relation to her loss. There's no point pretending she wouldn't be upset that she's not married, etc., because again it goes with the Victorian societal norms, but ultimately she feels good in her choice that she's chosen God. And then bloodless lily, they're usually white, so it might be the foretaste of death. Lilies are associated with funerals and the funeral flowers. And then bloom, the bloodless lily, if the flowers of, you know, that connote to death are blooming, perhaps, you know, we're nearing death or nearing an acceptance of what's going to come in the afterlife. If any should force entrance, he might see there one buried yet not dead, before whose face I no more bow my head or bend my knee there. The forced entrance, she would not willingly allow one to enter her heart. Quite a nice and simple point there. He might see there one buried yet not dead. If one was to force entrance into her heart, they would deserve a heart still clinging to her unrequited feelings. They would not be dead. However, in an attempt to renounce these feelings, she buries them in the belief this will completely eradicate them. So her feelings aren't completely gone at all, but she chooses to almost bury them, to try and bury your feelings. Like we often do when we're grieving, we bury them rather than potentially deal with them properly. Before his face I no more bow my head or bend my knee there. She has moved on emotionally and no longer worships the memory of her former lover, as expressed in the rhythmic metaphor. In short, she has suppressed the memory. So emotionally she has moved on, but that doesn't mean she doesn't, you know, wish for the memories of him and you know, what could have been had she gone down that path instead of this religious one. And then the final stanza, but often in my worn life's autumn weather, I watch there with clear eyes and think how it will be in paradise when we're together. So you've got the worn life, autumn, winter. The speaker is now older. We're in the autumn of life, which is, as we know, a metaphor for later in life. And then clear eyes. She understands what she's lost and she accepts it. She's not bitter about it. She knows her decision. She made her decision and is happy with it. And now she's almost thinking to the future, into the afterlife. And then the ending is oddly positive and it almost has a romantic ending. The speaker is looking forward to paradise, you know, heaven, so she can be together with this lover, because in heaven she, you know, she's proven herself and she won't be sinning, etc. So just a quick question you need to consider is, why is it important to note that part one and part two were written 8 years apart? Why is that quite significant to this poem? If you'd like to do further research on this poem, do have a look at the website on the slide. There's a fair bit on this poem in general, so do have a look around it if you're a little confused by it. Hopefully you understand the gist of it, and once you read through the poem a few times, I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine with it understanding it. And finally, can you just make sure that you write your notes up on your A3 grids?